Michigan is fresh off its first road game of the season, a win over the Iowa Hawkeyes. The Wolverines were dominant for nearly the first 3 quarters of that game, and then they got a little bit shaky toward the end. Next up is Michigan's second road game of the season, a trip to Bloomington to face the Indiana Hoosiers. Another big noon kickoff for the Wolverines. A quick look at the history of Michigan versus Indiana football. Michigan is 60-10 all time. The last time the Hoosiers won was during the chaotic 2020 season. Before that, it was 1987. Last season, Michigan cruised to a 29-7 win. So far this season, Indiana is 3-2 with wins over Illinois, Idaho, and Western Kentucky to start the season, and then consecutive losses on the road to Cincinnati and Nebraska. Indiana is 83rd in the nation in total offense, averaging 384 yards per game, scoring a total of 15 offensive touchdowns, and averaging only 4.75 yards per play. Michigan sits at 33rd in total offense, with 456 yards per game, 27 offensive touchdowns, and a little over 7 yards per play. On the defensive side, Indiana ranks 107th in total defense, giving up 420 yards per game, 17 offensive touchdowns, and 5.45 yards per play. Michigan ranks 7th, giving up only 252 yards a game, only 7 offensive touchdowns, and just a little over 4 yards per play. Where Indiana really struggles on defense is against the pass. They're giving up 277 yards per game, which puts them at 118th in the country. Indiana's most recent game was a loss at Nebraska. They were tied at the half, but then Nebraska scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to win 35-21. Indiana was without their 2 top receivers in that game, though. Cam Camper and DJ Matthews were both unable to play. The offensive line seems to be a problem for Indiana. They gave up 3 sacks and several quarterback pressures against Nebraska, and they only averaged 2.9 yards per rush in that game. In the second half, they had 15 possessions and only scored 14 points, with a grand total of 71 total yards. Indiana's starting quarterback is Connor Bazelak. This article from 24/7 says with Michael Penix gone to the Pacific Northwest, Indiana starts Missouri transfer and former 4-star prospect Connor Bazelak. This season, the quarterback has a 52.8 completion percentage with 8 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He has a strong arm but struggled to hit open receivers against Nebraska, although injuries to the wide receiver corps played a role in that. He does have a strong arm, and one thing to note here is that Indiana leads the country in pass attempts per game at 54.3. So expect Michigan's secondary to be really busy in this game. Hopefully Michigan's defensive line can get in the backfield some though, because Indiana is currently dead last in the Big Ten in sacks allowed, and they're 11th in tackles for loss allowed. I just watched the Indiana-Nebraska game, and if I were the Hoosiers, I would give number 12, Jalen Lucas, the ball a little bit more. That kid has some sick moves. Also in that game, Nebraska blocked a punt and returned it for a touchdown. And we know that one of Michigan's strengths this year is the special teams. Unfortunately, Cade Kolazar is out for the rest of the season with an injury. Games like these tend to get labeled as trap games because Michigan just came off that big road game against Iowa, and next week they have a potentially top 10 matchup against Penn State. So it's like, ooh, this could be a trap game. Indiana could be a trap game. And Coach Harbaugh is aware of that too. He said, whatever tag you put on a game, it comes down to playing good. All the teams we play this week, next week, and every week after, if we play good, we've got a really good chance at winning. If we don't play good, we've got a really good chance of getting beat. I'm not sure about Coach's grammar, but he's right. As long as Michigan executes, they should win the game. Here's what I want to see when Michigan takes on Indiana this weekend. I want the pass rush to look like it did toward the end of the Iowa game. You know, at the beginning of that game, the front four didn't get a whole lot of pressure, some from the middle, not much from the edge. I mean, Mike Morris had a sack early, but besides that, Petras had a good bit of time to throw. But toward the end of the game, especially on Iowa's last meaningful drive, Iabioki, Mike Morris were able to get in there a lot. And if Michigan can start this game like it ended the last one on defense, I think that'll be a good sign of things to come. I want to see JJ connect on his deep passes, and I feel like I've said this in like the last 3 preview videos, but it's time. It's time to start hitting these deep passes. Roman Wilson has been open a few times, and JJ just keeps barely overthrowing him. So it's time to get a little more air into those throws and connect on the deep passes, because then that makes the offense just so much more explosive. I think I'd like to see less predictable play calling in short yardage situations, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. It's been a good bit of running up the middle, and I know it does work a lot, But I feel like, especially on second and short, Michigan can mix up their play calling a little more, take some shots, get some play action going, do some read option, maybe eliminate that speed option from the playbook until JJ can truly make that defender bite a little bit more on his fake. But I would like to see that, especially in the red zone, get second and short in the red zone and call something besides just a run. I'd like to see the pass coverage tighten up just a little bit. Last week it looked like Petrus had some shots and just misfired, especially against zone defense, like between the linebacker and the safety. There were some open receivers and he just missed them. So Indiana's more likely probably to make Michigan pay than Iowa. Currently, the Wolverines are a 21.5-point favorite over the Hoosiers. Of course, you can't overlook any team, but it's hard for me to see Indiana pulling off the upset here. Indiana has a struggling offensive line, a struggling secondary, and a quarterback completing under 53% of its passes. And Michigan currently has the most accurate quarterback in college football, completion percentage wise. I know it's still early, so don't come at me. My prediction, Michigan 41, Indiana 14. I think that JJ will finally connect on a deep ball or two. I think the pass rush will take a step forward earlier in the game. And I think Blake Corum's just going to keep doing his thing. So I got 41-14. Let me know what your predictions are down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Go Blue.